All right, we should be live here. I'm here with Dave Martel from The Revolutionary Conservative and a few other places. And Dave has a very exciting and slightly scary story.
All right,
He got deplatformed from his channel completely.
And a few other places.
Oh, I'm having issues here. There we go. I'm getting the audio feedback from the novice here. But your whole social media presence got deleted from Facebook. Is that correct?
Yeah. I had my profile, and I had a couple of alternative sock accounts that were sitting there as well, and just out of nowhere, I got entirely wiped, all of it. I have for the past months have made a concerted effort not to say anything vulgar, anything against our terms of service. I didn't say the FAG word, or I was even cleaning up my F words, and pretty much everything out of my mouth was straight laced and clean, and no real edgy memes. I was saying nothing but positive stuff, and I turned over a new leaf. I got away from my trolling stuff so I could maintain my platform, which it took me quite a few years to build up, build up my audience and stuff. Thankfully, they come and they're slowly finding me again. However, it took me a long time, and then out of nowhere, they wiped me completely. And not just me, multiple other people on the same exact day at the same exact time.
Now, I'm sure there are a bunch of bitter edgelords on the side who are thinking, let's see what good that did for you. Cucking out and being all polite and normal and decent and shit, and they still de-censor you, or still censor you. But I think we're both moving in a similar direction where it's actually more enjoyable to talk with people who are speaking civilly, as fun as it can be to be vulgar and abusive and all that other stuff. But yeah, it's crazy, and it seems as if the censor lords that be prefer to go for the people who are more polite. It seems to me that they almost prefer, because the first people they went for on Twitter. The first person they went for on Twitter last year was Jared Taylor, who was an immaculate speaker, very respectful, very, very kind. I don't know if anyone's ever been able to find him saying anything abusive at all, or even that could be construed that way. But he was the first person they went for. So there's almost a bit of it's almost like, oh, I'm apparently a target worth shooting at if they're censoring me.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's kind of flattering, because it's there's guys out there that float around that are the edgiest, most obnoxious, like full on, throwing Jews in ovens memes, just like the worst, like the most obnoxious people there are. They float around freely saying whatever they want, threats of violence and psychopath stuff. And I talk about family values and have a couple tongue-in-cheek jokes here or there, and I get wiped. It's like, so it's kind of flattering that to me that means that I'm more of a threat to them than these other guys are.
Yeah, you don't make the right look bad, so you're not useful in that way. But tell me about how this happened. Did they give you a reason or a justification or explanation as to why your Facebook page? First of all, how long did you have your Facebook page before it got taken down?
About 4 years, about 4 or 5 years.
Okay. And did they give you a reason or an explanation? Did they tell you what specific part of their terms of service you violated, or which thing you said or did violated it?
Nothing. They said your account has been disabled.
That's it. Just your account's been disabled.
It.
Okay.
It has been disabled.
Now, I think many people who aren't necessarily in our circles will be unaware of this, but our mutual friend Augustus Invictus recently found out that one of his videos, which was a debate he had with a communist, got all but disabled on YouTube. And the exact same video, if I understand this correctly, on that communist's YouTube channel that he was debating was completely untouched. It had all its features enabled and all of that. So it seems like the Silicon Valley overlords are really cracking down on and censoring conservative and right-wing content, or at least certain kinds of conservative and right-wing content.
Sure. Well, what the Facebook neural network does is it kind of groups people in, you know what I mean, according to your friend circles, just like how it does with like you notice how you only see certain people in your timeline and this and that, the people that you interact with more intimately than others. It does the same thing. It recognizes people by groups, and when certain groups ping with certain topics more often, then they come up on the radar more. For example, my theory, and it's a theory, it's not just my theory, it's quite a few other people have come to this conclusion that it's a combination of two things, or one of these two things. That one, they want to silence this whole pedophile ousting that's going on in Hollywood, which is something that I've been railing on for years and years. It's actually sort of I think my coming back to video when I first started getting back into podcasting, doing video podcasting, my second episode ever was about Hollywood pedophile rings. So this was like 4 years ago. This is like well before the election and everything. So it's like I've been harping on this for a long time. And a lot of my friends, people that I associate, obviously are on similar topics, and they're part of the same crusade to take out these evil monsters that create this propaganda and shouldn't be in the seats that they are. Number two is they made a huge mistake, a heaving misstep by allowing us to operate freely during the Trump election, and therefore they allowed the meme war to happen. I'm sure everybody's read the articles saying, why did Facebook allow the alt-right to put around their propaganda? Why did they allow Trump got elected because of them? And they blame social media for allowing us to spread our propaganda, which was successful. And Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda guy, who's regarded as one of the best propagandists to ever live, probably next to what's his balls, the American propaganda guy, Edward Bernays. Right. Goebbels, he said the best kind of propaganda is that which is true, and that's why our stuff got so much traction. I had memes during the election. I'm a small fry. I'm not a big guy. I'm not Steven Crowder or one of these other guys that gets a gazillion views on every single show or whatever. I was having memes reaching 2, 3, 4, 5 million impressions, millions of impressions with my memes. So we helped win the election. The leftists are absolutely right. Our propaganda. So they do not want that to happen coming up to this supposed blue wave thing. This the midterm elections. They cannot afford another stomping or even a slight loss. So they're doing everything in their power to silence anybody that could have any sort of, and believe you me, they know, like, there's no way they don't know that I had that kind of reach. And how many guys that were like my size or bigger that had even more reach with their memes and stuff. So we were all on their radar. They know exactly who we are. They don't want us spreading the truth and our propaganda, and they don't want us being an obstacle in their way of achieving their Marxist utopia.
Yeah, a couple points I think are worth bringing up. First, a point about the term propaganda, because that word comes with so much moral baggage for people who haven't read into it and haven't spent some time to learn about it. A lot of people think that propaganda is I actually took a course in the techniques and technology of propaganda when I was still in school and less adamant in my hatred of higher education than I am now. And the course defined propaganda as false or misleading information that pursues an ideology. And it's a useful starting place to understand propaganda, but that's not necessarily what propaganda is, if I understand the term correctly. It originated with the Catholic Church, if memory serves, and it was about propagating the faith. So it is information that serves an ideology, but it doesn't have to be true, or I'm sorry, it doesn't have to be untrue or given in bad faith. A well-reasoned argument that has influenced how you live your life, that you're giving in congruent with your own interests and values and so on, can be propaganda. And that's, I think, what we're both talking about in combating leftist propaganda with our own propaganda about what we think is true and moral and good and all that good stuff. And the second thing is there's a Well, I guess 2 more points. First of all, are you familiar with the Streisand effect, the term? And do you think that's gonna work in our favor, or do you think they've got some cards up their sleeves that might make that more difficult technically?
I think it's gonna work in our favor. I think that in the Streisand effect, you're talking about how if you say something enough, people do the opposite, right?
Well, I think that the term originated from a time where someone had taken a picture of Barbara Streisand's house, which was this magnificent mansion somewhere in California, and she had tried to censor that. She had tried to hide that, in the way that the Church of Scientology had tried to hide 4chan's funny video of Tom Cruise back in the original days. And my understanding of the Streisand effect is that the attempt to censor some piece of content can result in that content spreading much further than it otherwise would have without attempting to censor it.
Yeah. It's the more you try to silence something or cover something up, the more alluring and erotic that piece of information becomes.
Right.
Like look, like in Germany during during the time of the Berlin Wall, one of the most well-read books was actually Mein Kampf. And it was completely illegal. It was completely illegal to read it.
Well, same with Animal Farm in 1984 in Soviet Russia, which was also banned. Made its way around very, very efficiently.
And this only, in my opinion, really only applies to literature or things that are thought-provoking. It only applies to red pills, because when if you like, people say, well, if you ban this drug, then people are going to want to do it more. I don't know if that's true. Like, I don't think if you like heroin being illegal makes more people want to do it because it's the naughty thing to do. I think if people think that it's going to give them some sort of forbidden knowledge, Adam with the forbidden apple or something like. If it has that sort of thing, that sort of connotation attached to it, I think people then do pursue it. However, I do think that it's going to play in our favor. I think these people have gotten too arrogant. They think that they thought they had it in the bag. That's why they've in the past 5 years have gone from 0 to 60. They went from just being like your happy-go-lucky kind of like just a cucky liberal weirdo douchebags to violent, psychopathic, borderline terrorists or full-blown terrorists. And that's I just read a thing about Proud Boys. They over on the West Coast. They had, I guess, Proud Boys in Oakland, California, met at a bar, and a bunch of journalists and city council people tweeted out that they were there. There was a big fight, and so another bar in the area said to garner attention and get some free advertisement, sent out the tweet or whatever that the Proud Boys were there, which they were not, and a violent mob came. And in fact, even the mayor of Oakland tweeted out that Nazis were gathering at one of the local bars. Wow. And the vicious leftist mob showed up, and obviously there's no Proud Boys there, so they ended up beating the snot out of some poor bastard in an American shirt, accusing him of being a Nazi. And it turns out, jokes on them, the guy adopted little black kids. He's a white guy, adopts little black foster kids. So and even when it came out, the truth came out in social media, and even like people that were part of the mob were like, hey, this guy didn't do anything. Later on social media, the local media, the Marxist rags, still said that Proud Boys showed up and got beat up for being racist.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think you're right. They are really accelerating in the violence and in all the viciousness that they're attacking people with. Well, at least part of them are. And I think there is a contingent of the left that's thinking maybe we're stepping in a little bit too deep here. Maybe we ought to back up. You get the Jonathan Hydes, the Jordan Petersons, some of the other people like Sam Harris and Dave Rubin, who I would say are on the left, albeit what you might call the reasonable left. They're the sorts of people I want to be arguing with and debating with about policy and stuff, rather than the sort of Antifa socialist crazies. But my concern, and the reason I asked you about what your thoughts are with the Streisand effect, is that part of the reason that literature was able to get around in communist Germany and communist Russia was that the government didn't have the power to limit the technical means of copying and disseminating that information. Yeah, how are you going to stop people from spreading books, right? But
you can't.
But the digital landscape seems to be different in kind. There, it seems like I don't know if you follow the Murdoch TV show on.
I've seen it. It's pretty silly.
They're pretty goofy, pretty funny though. I would put their humor as more edgy than say Rick and Morty, but about on par as far as the quality of the humor goes. Maybe not quite as good as Rick and Morty, but they got taken off YouTube, and I mean they were pretty huge, and now they've still got their own site and stuff, but because they're not on YouTube anymore, except in like disconnected mirror shows and things, it seems like their viewer count really has gone down substantially. And it seems like they do have the technical power to limit that, and the Streisand effect may or may not work because they have the means of actually technically reducing reach.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right in a current lens. However, if you look long term, look how quickly in the past few years we've come out with alternative social media. I mean, alternative YouTube, your BitChute and PewTube and all of this stuff coming out. The Steam thing, DTube, and all that. Their alternatives come out. If you don't let people have free access to information, especially now, I mean, nowadays, this isn't the time of the Catholic Church back in the Middle Ages. We don't care. You know what I mean? We want our information. We want our stuff. If we want free movies, we're going to go hack them and steal them off the internet. There's nothing you can do. We all do it. Let's I'm not going to, I guess I'm incriminating myself. I don't really watch movies, so I don't do it. I mean, I haven't, but everybody does. Everybody does that. Everybody, cracks Photoshop. Everybody, because we want our free stuff. We want our free access to information, to products as much as possible, especially information. And when you tell us we can't have it, we're going to find another avenue.
I was taking free content from Stefan Molyneux for years before I finally felt guilty enough to make a donation.
Yeah, he probably likes it, though. That guy's he's probably into that. But
yeah.
It's only in the current lens. Yeah, it kind of feels like they're winning, and they are, and they don't just hit you with your YouTube channel, your Facebook. They hit you with your PayPal. They hit you on your Patreon. They hit you with the ways that you make money. They hit you with everything. Your IP. They blacklist you on Google. They are the monolith. They are they hold the keys to the castle. They're the king on the throne. They own all of it. And we're gonna have to break them up. These alternative things are gonna, and I'm guilty of it too. I still, most of my social media, propaganda effort is on Facebook still, which I'm guilty of as well. I spend most of my time focusing on YouTube. I need to practice what I preach and get off of this crap and start contributing to these other platforms.
Yeah, I'm working on monetizing my own blog right now, and we're looking at ways of doing that. There's affiliate links, there's ads, but the biggest one is donations and monthly patron style donations. And Sierra, my wife and I were talking like, do we want to do Patreon? And we thought about it, and we're like, no, they've pulled the plug on so many other groups doing legitimate work, even if we don't necessarily agree with it. The fact that they could pull the plug on legitimate work means they're susceptible to the sort of pressure where they could pull it on us too. And if you've got 30 subscribers paying monthly donations, and you have to reset that up, you're not going to get those 30 back. You'll have to start from scratch again, and it's just not worth even starting with a company like that, like Patreon, if they're going to if there's even the possibility of them pulling the plug on you like that for ideological reasons. And often it's not even that you went ideologically out of line. Sometimes it's enough that you are perceived to have gone ideologically out of line, and that can hit anyone, even if you're progressive.
Yeah, absolutely could. And they're unapologetic about it. If they view you as an enemy, they will deplatform you. They will take away your money. They will defund you. They will do everything in their power to silence you, shadow ban you, censor you. Everything in their power. Everything in their power, and it's so easy for them because all they have to do is send an email to one of the guys in their tech department, and all he does is make a few keystrokes, and everything that you've ever worked for is gone.
Yeah,
it's like, and they have no shame in it because they hate you. They hate you. They hate all of us. They make no bones about it. If they could press a button and we'd all go up in flames, and they could right now. So keep in mind, these people are our enemies. They hate us. Well, these people, they're obsessed with destroying us.
Yeah. They're at war with us. And when I tell people, like some of my friends, that I think we're in the beginning stages of a second American Civil War, they look at me like I'm insane. But Andrew Breitbart was talking about this back in 2008. He said they are at war with you, and they throw eggs at you, and they assault you, and they try to, and it's easy to think that the beginning of this war isn't happening because everything appears to be, for the most part, within at least the grayer areas of legality. It's like, well, what they're doing isn't illegal necessarily, but what they're doing to people who ideologically disagree with them is oftentimes far more harmful than acts of assault or even libel that are not legal. They would, if one of the Antifa people comes and punches, a right-winger in the face, a la Richard Spencer, most of the left-wing people are like, oh, that's terrible. We would never condone that because it's illegal. Now, what they will condone is that they all businesses refuse to do business with people who don't ideologically agree with them, so that these people can't buy a home, can't live in an apartment, can't buy food, can't have shelter or electricity or they would love it if plumbers and city infrastructure were able to refuse to do business with people who they could plausibly label as white supremacist, which apparently includes Barack Obama now. Did you hear about that?
Okay. What is it again?
He apparently got labeled as a white supremacist because he said that people shouldn't just dismiss people because they're white and male. And that is apparently sufficient to be labeled as a white supremacist, even if you are not white, which I found amusing and extraordinary. But it just goes to show that there's no limit to who this label could hit.
And you believe it, they will absolutely. We saw it with this whole Me Too thing. They will use their labels, and they will use it to cannibalize their own, to give power and to give traction to these narratives and these weapons, this weaponized witch hunts. They will use their own as sacrificial lambs and place them upon the altar of ideological victory in order to then turn the sights later on their actual enemies. Don't think that they wouldn't. That's exactly what they do, and they'll keep doing it. They don't care. These are not humans. These are demonic, hateful. These are monsters. These people. They want us. With us as right wingers, as conservatives or traditionalists or whatever you call yourself. If we were left alone, we would not mess with anybody. If we had our money, we had our livelihood, if we didn't have to worry about being forced into immigration, if everything was hunky dory, like most of us wouldn't even talk about politics. We'd still be Chads watching the football game.
Just let us be Switzerland and stick to ourselves and climb our mountains and milk our cows and hang out with our family. And but no, they have to intrude. You're exactly right. They have to disrupt any success that disproves the theories that give meaning to their lives and their existence. Because it's an existential threat.
They could, what they say about Tony's mom in The Sopranos. They said, You're the kind of lady that could have a prize ham under one arm and still be having your hand out for some mustard. These fucking guys, like they could have everything. They could have their progressive paradise in their own little area of the world, and nobody would ever mess with them, and they could have complete everything they want, and they would still reach out and try to mess with us because our existence is obnoxious, is excruciating to them. The fact that we exist drives them insane.
Yeah, it's getting pretty serious, and I'm becoming increasingly irritated by right wing and conservative and libertarian and even moderate liberal people whose attitude is that you should just keep your head down and basically not draw attention to yourself, and this whole thing will pass over you. The appeasement strategy works great for like 1, maybe 2 generations, but eventually, you'll be the one that the crocodile eats last. And it's just pawning off the responsibility of dealing with the problems to the next generation, which I personally find to be morally repulsive. And although part of it's personal, I enjoy the combat too much to to give the honor to another generation. So, anyways,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, our boy Chris from Revolutionary Conservative, he had a video. It was yesterday or whatever. He's saying he was absolutely right, and it's something that I've been saying. Especially when I started getting away and I started being honest about some of my more extreme views, that I revealed my power level. People were saying, well, you're gonna get in trouble. This, that, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, maybe I will, but here we go, dude. Like, here's the bottom line. I'm the extreme guy now.
Yeah.
What happens after they get rid of me? Now you're the extreme guy.
Well, and
after they deplatform me and there's no more Dave Martels, there's no more Christopher Robertsons, there's no more Revolutionary Conservative, there's no more, even these other guys that I don't like that are out there, and I don't even pay attention to what they're doing because what they're doing is so obnoxious and vulgar. I don't even pay attention. I'm glad that they're there because they're the first line of defense against this war on free speech. And after those guys are gone, which most of them are, now they're coming after me. After I'm gone, they're coming for the conservatives. You're the Nazis next, guys.
Yeah. Well, and as we talked about before, they will eventually go for the extremists, but it does seem like the sincere and thoughtful and intelligent people who are oftentimes not particularly extreme are sometimes the first ones to go because they're the real threat to their ideology. And again, like the fact that they went for Jared Taylor before they went for Matt Heimbach is, in my opinion, kind of all you need to know about the priorities of censorship. And they went for Milo very early on, even before Jared Taylor, and that was before they were talking about going after the alt-right specifically, because everyone knows that Milo is not alt-right, contrary to every progressive's wish. He's a flamboyant classical liberal, and he was not alt-right. You could make an argument that he's not even really a conservative, and yet they criticized him. They took him out before any of the more extreme conservatives because he was saying critical things of the far left in an intelligent and reasonable fashion, and he was a bigger threat. Yeah, and they all of their labels, and I think he knew this, that I think he plays up a lot of that weird stuff that he talks about. Oh,
it grosses me out. Yeah,
he was way more serious 3 years ago than he was even a year and a half ago. I actually enjoyed reading his stuff 3 years ago. He would put out very intelligent and serious articles. His introduction to Vox Day's SJWs Always Lie was arguably the best writing in the whole book, in my opinion. He's kind of gone downhill from there.
Yeah, and that was by the establishment, man, that took him down. That guy, was it Evan Cuck Muffin or whatever, whatever that weirdo
McMullen,
Mormon guy that came out of nowhere. Yeah, McMullen. Yeah, he spent like $2 million trying to take down Milo.
Yeah. So the idea that these censors will only come for the extreme people it's silly because it misunderstands the actual intent and purpose behind it. But it's also silly when you look at the mechanism by which they're doing this. Like you mentioned before, they're doing this oftentimes based on neural networking and who you're friends with. And I can't imagine they wouldn't do it based, at least in part, on search terms and keywords. I have a couple friends who have PhDs in computer science, and they're working on artificial intelligence language processing. And it's incredibly difficult to teach computers to read intent and context. And it's impossible to get them to read humor and satire. You just can't do that. And so there was this piece that came out a few weeks ago where the Facebook auto-censored part of the Declaration of Independence because it referenced Indian savages or something like that. But how are they going to deal with satire? How are they going to deal with arguments that begin by taking the thing they're taking down seriously? Are they going to ban 1984 for advocating totalitarianism? Because that's where the logic of this keyword and neural network censorship will lead. If I were to make a post saying, on this hatred of the Jews, and I talk about anti-Semitism, and I bring these points up, and say I have some argument against Kevin McDonald, and I bring it up in order to counter it, these people are going to censor me for anti-Semitism.
It's already happening. It's already happening. You see people, like they'll complain about somebody saying the N-word or something, and then they get shut down for saying the N-word. Yeah. It's actually on Facebook. It's one of my, troll tactics for leftists that are harassing me, that are stalking me and stuff. I'll goad them into saying, a buzzword. For example, like the last time I had some guy kept calling him the FAG word, but I was misspelling it really bad on purpose so Facebook wouldn't pick it up. And with their how pompous and arrogant they are, and they're always the tactic of trying to correct your spelling and call you out for being a coward. Obviously, he did he spelled it FAG the right way with the star to try to correct me, and I reported him and I got him on a block. So it does it, and
that's great.
Yeah, and they came out firing again a few days later after he came out of his post block, and he said it again. I reported him again, and he got shot. So. But yeah, he got wrecked pretty hard. He's a scumbag. But this is they're getting mad now. You see leftist YouTube channels getting shut down for saying these words because you're right. It's completely based on keywords. It's not going to be like, we're just going to take down people that are racist. Anybody, when it's based on neural networks, and it's based on keywords, and it's based on getting pinged for these things, the robot doesn't know. Yeah, the AI unit, the neural network doesn't know.
No word is racist. No word is. There's this absolutely phenomenal debate on Firing Line back in the '80s with Frank Zappa, and he just absolutely murdered the the questioner on this point because they were trying to ban certain words from music, and he's like, words can be assembled into sentences, but there is no word that is bad by itself. It depends entirely on how you use it, and the idea of banning words is silly. But that's what we're coming to, and it's it might look weird to good moral conservatives or whatever that we're chuckling about these people being banned. When don't you care about free speech? David Cole wrote a great piece, actually not that great of a piece, kind of a mediocre piece for himself actually, in Tacky Mag. It's generally a pretty good writer about the whole pedo joke from what's his face from the James Gunn or whatever. Yeah, and he said there's basically four types of people. Four types of conservatives taking a stance on this. There's the Pizzagate believers, which he thinks is ridiculous for some reason. There's I forget what two type, but the third type, which is me, is the Schadenfreude people who are like, leftists have been censoring us and pushing back and trying to define the right out of moral legitimacy for 25, 30 years, if not longer. And I mean, if you go back to the Frankfurt School, it's much longer. But and now we see them falling to their own tactics. It is absolutely delightful. And even if James Gunn was not a pedophile and it was just humor, and that's all he was trying to do, the groundlessness of it would make the Schadenfreude that much sweeter, because that's exactly what's been happening to us on the right for years now, decades, and the same David Cole actually wrote another piece for Tacky Mag saying the left has made racism a practical and reasonable position now. I haven't read the piece yet. I just saw the headline and thought, well, that's interesting coming from a Jewish right-wing writer for Tacky Mag, but amusing, and I think he's right.
And also, they made it edgy. I mean, they made being racist the new punk rock.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they're the new church ladies, and being edgy is politically edgy is what's counterculture. Kids are gonna want to rebel, especially when because I would make the argument that these people are absolutely worse than the church ladies, because the church ladies just wanted to kind of take your dirty fun away, but their intent was, for the most part, good. These people, their intent is bad. And not only do they want to take your fun away, they want to take away your livelihood. So it's it's even easier for kids and people like me that are have borderline personality disorder and like to get people's feathers ruffled. It makes it that much easier for us to purposely offend them and purposely say things that are obnoxious, because it's fun and it's naughty and it's bad. It's things that are naughty and bad and dark are funny. That's what comedy is based on. It's not funny right now, the pedophile stuff, because we've had to deal with because we know that there's people in the government and in media and in entertainment that are actually legitimate, like, evil, depraved people.
Yeah.
So it's not funny. But how many people I've laughed at pedophile jokes. Everybody's has a scumbag buddy that has the worst jokes, and you laugh at it because it's just horrible.
Oh, sure. Well, back in high school, dead baby jokes were the thing. That was edgy. It was funny because it was so morally evil. The shock punchline is dead baby, and it's like, oh, but it's a cringe chuckle. And I think some of what people are trying to do is in that category. But you're right. It is incredibly fun to offend people who are looking for something to be offended by. And there's a speech everyone, I think, ought to watch at least once. I've watched it probably several hundred times now, where Christopher Hitchens is defending free speech and hate speech specifically. Just YouTube search Christopher Hitchens hate speech and you'll find it. And but at one point in his talk, he's defending the German historian David Irving. I'm sorry, the British historian of the Second World War, David Irving, who is a bit contentious. But he was he took some time to have a joke at the expense of Austrians. He said, because Austria was the one who was putting David Irving in jail, and he said, "Does anyone know what's made Austria famous, given its reputation?" He said, "I hope there are some Austrians here to be upset by it. But the two things that have given Austria's reputation was to say that Hitler was German and Beethoven was Viennese." To sort of flip the responsibility there. And then he, of course, went on to the more serious point. But yeah, there are a number of people who are looking for things to be upset by, who are climbing over proverbial toilet stalls to find something dirty and offensive to cry about. And
yeah,
it's fun to make them cry if they're trying so hard to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a bit sociopathic, because it's like, I've always been like that. I've always, even as like a little kid, I always said the things that were the most shocking. It was funny to me how weak people are. If simple words can do, especially if it's funny, like if it's in joke format, and something can literally, a joke can upset you to the point that you are physically upset, then to me you're weak and you deserve it. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just adds more to the pile, more arrows in the quiver of guys that stand on the side of free speech and comedy, and that's what trolling used to be about. I mean, it's gotten pretty toxic and lousy at this point, but there was a time trolls, like, I still love the funny trolling. It's hilarious. It's a good laugh, and when you put something into the context of comedy, or. And this is something that I learned. I actually talk about propagandists, reading about Edward Bernays and stuff. who was, the nephew of Sigmund Freud and regarded as the greatest propagandist of all time, wrote, I think it was called American Propaganda. Everybody should read it. It's pretty shocking, some of the stuff that he came up with. He's the reason that we eat bacon and eggs right now. We never ate bacon with breakfast before he came out with a propaganda advertising campaign.
You mean public relations, right?
Public relations, absolutely correct. So you're familiar, yeah. But if anything that invokes a reptilian pleasurable reaction in a human, they will then internalize and digest and subconsciously memorize the idea that you have wrapped up in that emotion. So if your joke is funny, it doesn't matter what's in it. People will remember it because it gave them a positive reaction. I mean, if you have a meme and it's got a good-looking girl with her tits out and it has a caption with something that's really red-pilled, they're going to remember that because that's now associated with a nice pair of tits. I mean, it's something, you have something associated with some food or something that makes them feel good or nostalgic, or they'll always remember it. And that's the core of propaganda. And that's what these people don't realize, that they're giving us double weapons. They're giving us a two-sided blade. Not only are they're implementing the Streisand effect by making these things dirty and naughty and desirable to average people, they're also taking away the humor. So they're just kind of like handing us a grenade to throw back at them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it looks, and censorship always looks weak too, because it looks like you don't have an argument. There's an old saying that, like, the first person to throw a punch loses the argument, which, I mean, when you actually get into it, isn't necessarily always true, but generally speaking is true. And if you try to censor someone, it looks like you just don't have a good response. Like, you don't know what to say, and that's usually what happens. I remember the red pilling of Christopher Cantwell back in 2014, 2015. All these people were coming in and complaining about particular subjects, and he would dismiss them, but he would then speak to his audience and say, "Guys, give me some arguments against this. Give me some counter arguments," and no one could come up with any. And so now you talk with people like Mike Enoch or Augustus Invictus or even someone as relatively moderate as Milo, and the fact that they're trying to shut them down, and most of the time these people, all they want to do is have a debate and have a discussion and to explain their ideas, and maybe, like Chris Cantwell back in 2014, 2015, they want to be talked out of these positions that are otherwise going to get themselves in cultural and social trouble. But they're too noble or moral or courageous to give in without a reason, to give up an idea because, well, it's just more convenient to that. They're too loyal to the truth, as it were. And that's how I find myself. And the idea of shutting down debate is, it looks weak, it looks pathetic, and it makes us look like like you said, the cool guys.
Yeah, it's absolutely weak. It's I do. They shut me down on Facebook all because they can't win fair and square. They can't. They know they can't win fair and square. That's this whole thing. They say, "I don't talk to fascists. I don't do this." And then you see it, like if you're on Twitter and you're like, you call somebody out, you say, "Hey," you bust their balls about their stupid idea, and they say, "Oh, I don't talk to fascists," and then they just block you because they don't have an argument. There's no argument from their side, and they know it, and it upsets them because they're not critically thinking. They haven't hashed out these ideas and picked them apart and reassembled them and developed an ideology and a platform that they develop over. Because we like with spirit, we talked about this with spirituality in the past. It's your ideology is a path, and you piece it together as you come across new information along the way. They're not like this. They've been programmed. They're programmed to think these things, and they're programmed to react viscerally to anything that opposes those things. They're crazy people. They're crazy people. They're not like us.
Yeah, and it's there's some neurological reasons why they're not like us too. But the other danger of censorship, so far as I can tell, is that it actually limits the learning too. And whatever you may think of Jordan Peterson, I think he was right when he said that, it's important to be able to have these conversations and to speak your mind, because being wrong is an important part of thinking and being able to work through things, being able to say things even if you're incorrect. Like one of the guys who brought me out of my like default liberalism back in early college was Thomas Sowell, right? Thomas Sowell's books are phenomenal, and I think everyone should read them. But Thomas Sowell spent most of his college and his early adult days as a communist Marxist. And it was only when he got his job in the Labor Department that he's like, oh, this is all retarded. None of this works. And then he became this conservative and a relatively safe but sound advocate of sort of traditional American conservatism. And so people have to be able to be wrong in order to be right. And many of the best advocates of any ideology, left or right, were formerly on the other side. And that's why they know how to argue against it better. If you were a leftist and you wanted arguments against fascists, you would recruit a former fascist who actually understands the arguments. And they're going to be the best side. But if you prohibit those ideas from being able to be discussed, then you intellectually weaken yourself, and you have no arguments against the other side because you've never seen them before. I remember absolutely just effortlessly shredding liberals in my college debate team because they had never heard a conservative argument before, and I'm just like over here reading Douglas Murray. I'm like, oh, I can say this, and they just no way to deal with it.
Yeah. The last Trump rally that I went to, I mean, most Trump rallies turn into, you have the Antifa, the liberal circus creatures that show up to yell at you and call you names and throw stuff at you. Well, this particular rally, the police didn't separate us, so we're kind of like at each other's faces, like screaming at each other, like yelling and chanting and all this stuff. They're like yelling right at my. I guess I'm pretty positive that they recognized me. I mean, I felt like they recognized me. Because when you're walking up and they get just like a whole group of people look at you, and then like you could tell. So they were all yelling straight at me, calling me a fascist. And I went down the line, and every single one of them, I was like, define fascism, define fascism, define fascism. When I started coming down, I knew that some of them heard me, and they're like, yeah, they're looking at me with their wide eyes like, please don't ask me what a fascist is. And I did, and none of them knew. So I would get, you're a fascist, or fuck you, or all the garbage. And after I go down the line, probably like 7, 8, 9, 10 of them, I stood there and they just like stared at me, and I explained to them what fascism was. And they're like, they've never heard it before. Never heard it. They had no idea. They had no idea who Gentile was. No idea who Evola was. They had no idea. They never, like you said, they've never ever even heard of it before. They just think that they're a moral champion out here fighting evil Nazis that want to genocide people. Yeah. Like that's all. That's really the totality of their political and activist motivation, is they think that they're saving the world from Nazis. That's literally all they think, and that's all they know, because they've been conditioned to do so. I mean, you're in college, it's almost like a conditioning system to give people incremental PTSD.
Yeah, and it's funny, the people who are most often censoring, and I always love bringing up this fact because it puts all of this conversation in such crystalline context. Lauren Southern did an interview back when she was with the Rebel of a University of Toronto grad student who was doing research on the politics of censorship and the personality traits of people who were likely to be censors. And what they found was that there was a higher correlation between low verbal intelligence and the desire to censor other people's speech than there was between low verbal intelligence and poor grades. In other words,
that makes absolute sense.
Dumb people are more likely are even more likely to censor than they are to perform badly in school, which is ostensibly about educating you. So It as a initial a priori assumption, the would-be censors are idiots who don't understand what the hell they're doing. And the fact that these people have any repute at all among intelligent people on the left or the right is it's either stupid, or it's naive, or it's cynical on the part of the people who are accepting these arguments. And I think all three of those are equally bad.
Which is why they also instantly resort to violence. It's not, this is what they're saying, let me process it and return and pick it apart and prove that it's wrong. It's, I don't like what this says, make it go away now. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just like a visceral reaction. And,
they can't deal with the cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, I have a couple. I don't know if it's all cases about low IQ, because it's. I think it definitely is on a large scale, but
it's an emotional problem as well. But
yeah, I have friends that I grew up with that were smart people, that were, I would say, smarter than me. They go to college and they come out and they're lunatics, and they act just like that. It's like, what happened to you? You know what I mean? And you could see the switch. Like I have a friend that I used to play in a band with. And he's just like a Joe Schmo, but he's a smart guy. He's like really intelligent with music, like knows all the music in and outs and stuff like that. And he's a really smart guy. We would stay up all night drinking beers and talking about science and the universe and all kinds of stuff. Now he's just like a nutcase. A complete nutcase, obsesses with social justice. He gets kicked out of every band he's in because he's just like such a bizarre weirdo. And every single song that he writes is just about, like, he obsesses with the Holocaust, he obsesses with apartheid, obsesses with Jim Crow. He's like obsessed. You know, it's literally, they have a re-education camp that they're running. It's like some Clockwork Orange stuff.
Yeah, my theory is that the way that colleges can do that is they, especially in the sociology and gender studies and all these other departments, but in more generalized programs too, I think what they really try to do is they invest students with emotional attachments to certain groups or ideas, so that ideas that would challenge those become emotionally untenable. Like, I remember getting into an argument with a family member about immigration control, and this family member had gone to school down in Southern California in Berkeley, and so she had a few classmates who were undocumented immigrants, who were illegal here, who were here illegally, and so
invaders.
So any argument against illegal immigration or for constricting the border was no longer an abstract concept. It had been made personal by intentionally, in my opinion, but maybe not. But it had been made personal so that you could no longer have a reasonable discussion about the subject, which is unfortunate.
I know a young lady. I said I like Clint Eastwood movies, and she went nuts and said that Clint Eastwood needs to be in prison. Clint Eastwood needs to get shot. He's a Nazi. I was like, what are you talking about? I was just talking about, like, for a few dollars more. Like, I was just talking about good, bad, and the ugly. I was not talking about politics. And I finally got down to it. Apparently, he refused to put a wheelchair ramp on his. He had owned some bed and breakfasts in some state somewhere, Montana or something, and he refused to put it.
Ableist. Oh, what a fascist!
It came down to, I was like, why are you getting so nuts about it? I was like, you're not crippled. You don't even. I was like, do you know anybody that's in a wheelchair? And she's like, well, I learned it. They taught us that we're all disabled in some way, and it just clicked for me. I was like, so you have internalized this and personalized it because you've been conditioned to think that everybody is disabled somehow. So therefore, him saying, no, I'm not going to spend a bunch of extra money making a ramp for one person a year at my bed and breakfast, my property. Him doing that is an attack on you, is what you've been taught.
Yeah, or it's an attack on someone with whom you have a moral obligation to stick up for and defend. And so, put on the armor, rally the troops, we'll go on the crusade against the fascists or the Nazis or whoever said Keck today.
Yeah. How brave you are, lady.
Yeah.
Like, you're just screaming at me
just-
because I like spaghetti westerns. You're screaming at me, what a victory you're making, and how and everybody in the room heard it, and they're like, she's a nut. Yeah, so she did her argument no justice.
Well, I think
she couldn't.
She maybe did it perfect justice, and I think many of these people don't realize how nutty they look, and then in years later they realize, oh my god, I was a fucking crazy person back then. So.
Yeah, it's just what was bizarre is like she's at the end of the I was like trying to calm her down so I could get her to she literally put her fingers in her ears and went yeah like a fucking like a witch or something and left the room.
Wow.
I was like, what kind of crazy? And I thought she was a normal person until I saw that come out. And I was like, that was like the behavior of like somebody that's like a rape victim or somebody that like survived a war overseas, was in the military or something. That's not something that normal people. And then I really started looking into, they really do incrementally traumatize these people. That's why these girls like shave their heads and get these crazy eyes and do all this weird, gross stuff because they're behaving exactly like a trauma victim. They are not immediately, but slowly and incrementally traumatizing these kids. It's traumatization.
I certainly believe it. I'll have to do some digging and maybe see if we can find someone who can conduct some studies on that, because I'll bet if you were to do some comparisons, you could find a number of symptomatic crossovers. The only question is like to what degree, what's the trauma equivalent to in ordinary medical terms. Well, anyways, I don't want to keep you too much longer, and I got to get going shortly too. But give us a few parting words and where everyone can find you and your stuff now that you've been taken off of Facebook.
Yeah, I'm back on Facebook. I made a new profile, so people can go find me on Facebook. You also follow me on Twitter. I started using my Twitter at Big Dave Martel. You can find me on Gab and Minds at Dave Martel. You could also go to the revolutionaryconservative.com, click find all of our good stuff over there. You can check out my Patreon. I'm on patreon.com/Dave Martel. And make sure to go to amazon.com, pick up a copy of my book, The American Loyalist, A Proclamation of Moral Insurrection. I also make sure to go subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's where I go live every single weeknight. I'm taking this week off, so I'm not doing this week, but every weeknight at midnight Eastern, I go live on my YouTube channel, and I don't really do too much politics over there. I kind of try to focus on we do some news, we do, but we don't have a whole lot of in-depth political philosophy discussions. We focus on esoteric truths and spiritualism and lost civilizations. We talk about Atlantis and Hyperborea and Neuschwabenland, and we talk about we get into some paranormal. I had a show last week with Mr. John Dave about exorcisms and demonic possession. We talk about Lost City of Ur and Sumeria, and we get into all kinds of AI and automation and phenotypical revolution. We're all over the place over there. It's it's some of my favorite content that I've done. So make sure everybody go check that out. So that's where all you can find me. I also have a new outlet coming out called Hyperborean Sun. It's gonna be in correlation with a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, and I got more stuff coming. I got 2 more books coming out. I got more stuff coming, and also I'm eventually going to finish your foreword to your book. If I, it's going to be done very soon, I promise.
Awesome. Well, sounds wild and fun. I did see that you had talked with JF on that stream, so I haven't watched that yet, but I need to. I absolutely love his content as well as yours. So, anyways, thanks so much for coming on. Take care.
Thank you.
Godspeed, and protect all the protection from the overlords that you need.
Yes, sir. Hail victory.
Hail victory. Take care, man.